furore it would have caused is actually shockingly close to today, as opposed to something that we should think about in 8 months. But I think the main reason why the initial announcement was made was because our government is currently undertaking a staff monitor program that is in part financed by the International Monetary Fund. And this staff monitoring program is actually intended to cut government debt, both external debt and domestic debt. In doing so, the government is also looking to please the IMF so that it gets more loans, amongst other things, and boosts investor confidence. So this bonus announcement must not be viewed merely as a typical government disagreement. This bonus announcement is linked broadly and particularly to the political economy of the country, and particularly the government's relationship with the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, amongst others. And this is something that we are familiar with from a policy perspective, given the fact that we started implementing most of these IMF World Bank structural adjustment programs in the late 1980s. And to this day, despite announcements about indigenization, amongst other things, and economic nationalism in quotation marks, we are actually beholden still to the IMF and the World Bank. And this is the primary reason why the Minister of Finance announced it. The political reason might be the President realized quite significantly at Independence Day commemorations that losing votes from the millions of civil servants that we currently have is not, or people associated with civil servants, salaries, families, relatives, friends, and little businesses, is not a politically astute thing to do. So I think the President probably considered more the political implications of announcing the changes in bonus arrangements as a key issue. And but it is also an issue that relates to the fact that our political economy at the moment, whatever way you want to look at it, never mind the fact that we've dollarized, is undergoing austerity. And austerity is premised, A, on general international examples of how to cut government expenditure, especially vis-a-vis hospitals, vis-a-vis schools, universities, transport, amongst other things. Essentially how to privatize the state. It's premised on IMF World Bank frameworks, but more tellingly now, as has been cited by some academics, also on the concept and principle as well as practice of state capitalism, where the state itself becomes a big business. This model is largely borrowed from Southeast Asia. Domestically, it is linked largely to examples within Ethiopia and Angola. Unlike the Angolans, we do not have oil, so we have no big natural resources to throw around and use as a pretext for state capitalism. So broadly spoken, for the announcement by government around cancellation of bonuses and then the withdrawal of that policy intention by the President is within the context of austerity and cutback in government expenditure to not only fit the IMF World Bank model, but also to fit the state capitalism model. But so whichever way you want to look at it, there was nothing noble in the two announcements. There was no good intention on the part of government, whether it was the Minister of Finance who actually said, yes, we're going to cut bonuses, or whether the President then said, no, we're not cutting bonuses. The long and short-term implications of the same is that the government is still going to try and cut expenditure, particularly towards vulnerable elements of the economy, such as social service delivery, and including public service, which is the biggest employer, formal employer in the country at the moment. So they want to please both the IMF and the World Bank, because the Minister of Finance was early this year in Washington. And one of the newspaper headlines actually said Mugabe scappers or compromises. I don't know the word that was used exactly. IMF World Bank deal, something like that. And then they also want to please their new financiers in relation to mega deals, that is the Chinese and the Russians. As I said before, we have a state capitalist model towards development. And this is largely based on elitist accrual, cronyism, and private-public partnerships that essentially are not transparent and leads to those that drive discoveries that you see on the streets today. You get a tender, you're home and dry. Whether the tender is actually being implemented transparently and without corruption is another matter. So that's the two models they want to please. But I think the more important issue is the response of the civil service, whether through their unions or through their own separate organizations and so on. I think in the first place, the unions were correct to issue statements concerning their government's contractual obligation to pay them their salaries. They're very correct. And so are some of the gladiators who then argued with this announcement showed that government is dysfunctional, amongst other things, and we should govern. I know that the main opposition parties issued very scathing statements to that effect, and some civil society organizations also issued statements decrying the confusion and also the intention to cancel bonuses. But I think the other important point to take into account with regards to the Civil Service Unions Association and civil society response is that the general state of the economy is something that should be taken into account when responding to such announcements. The civil service cannot be viewed as an isolated sector of the political economy of the country, because not only because it is in direct charge of how we are governed or implementing policies, but also because in and of itself it has been suffering as much as we have, who are not employed by the civil service or who are informal traders. If you look at the announcements by the minister concerning increases in rentals, that's affecting almost everybody. Rentals for civil service, those that are housed in government apartments. And then if you look at the premium, which was then formerly the public services, the medical aid society, and how it has collapsed. And then if you look at low pensions given to civil servants after retirement or after injury, amongst other things. And then also if you look at the general high cost of living of goods and services in the country, the response of the civil service unions is indicative of a greater symptom of challenge with the national political economy. It's not working. And as such, civil servants themselves need to relate more and more to the broader political economy of the country as opposed to their own particular vested interests. What they're going through, at least they have a basic salary. But for the greater majority of Zimbabweans, there is no such privilege. When it starts, some companies like to call it, you got a base salary, you got a departure. So, in terms of a way forward, the way I would view it, the point is to say, okay, we are lucky, we still have a bonus, which is still 8 months away. It's not here, because this bonus issue is something that happens later. The intention of government is to demonstrate to the IMF that we're going to cut costs, and they cut costs annually, etc., etc. In fact, I think the latest report is from the IMF, from the SMP, is supposed to come out was supposed to come out either last month, March, April, or this month. I'm not sure it's coming. It's out here, the latest report. I haven't seen it. Civil servants themselves need to, leverage. If there was a time they should be united, it is now. That is the honest truth. If there was a time they should be united, it is now, not only in relation to their interests, but in relation to giving a public voice to issues affecting the political economy of the country negatively. So, if there was a time they should be united, it is now. And mainly because they have to negotiate their value. And I'm just saying this as a personal opinion. It's not an attack on the civil service, unions or associations or broadly speaking. They have to negotiate their value vis-a-vis government. What do they mean to the political economy? How do their interests tally with the greater public good of every other Zimbabwean? Whether you work at the Registrar General's office, at Parinyapo Hospital, even in the police services. The unity is premised on negotiating your value to your society, a civil service, especially because, it is your society that pays your salary. Even if government declares it's not giving you a bonus, it's still going to tax someone to pay you. Tax the company, tax the combi driver, amongst other things, to pay. So they have to renegotiate their value to give themselves greater impetus, both in terms of negotiating with the employer government, but also public legitimacy. The public must understand why you need to have a bonus. I'm not sure if the public would be very happy with nurses getting bonuses if the service they give is bad, amongst other things. Then secondly, there's need for broader debates within civil society and trade unions around the national political economy itself. The disjointed responses are indicative of interest first or specific group interest first before you talk about the entirety of the country. And this needs an ideological departure point in terms of analysis, in terms of understanding. We need to understand what state capitalism is and to look at its challenges. We need to understand what World Bank, IMF are talking about in terms of neoliberalism that is privatizing the state completely. And then we need to come up with a clear alternative, both from an ideological pretext as well as from an action standpoint. And the ideological alternative, in my view, and it's a very personal view, but I'm sure some comrades might share it, we need a social democratic ideological framework to counter such intentions by government. And social democratic basically mean you have social service delivery as being a priority of government, but also simultaneously you have promotion of innovation, entrepreneurship, which does not necessarily compromise the greater public good. So you won't have a runaway Chiato, or you won't have a mega deal in which thousands of people are displaced in Darwin, amongst other things, amongst other areas. And you won't have a situation in which the government announces two different policies within the space of a month without a public response that is concerted and related to the broader political picture. So to conclude, we all need to value the work of the public service. It's a very important aspect of Zimbabwean society, the Zimbabwean political economy. But in doing so, we must build a new symbiotic relationship with the public service. To what extent is it actually performing? To what extent are the teachers actually teaching? As opposed to wanting to get the best dollar. If you want to start a business in Zimbabwe at the moment, at least a sustainable one for about 6 months, you probably need to start a teaching school. And that's why you have a plethora of private schools all over the place. Because it's lucrative. A parent will definitely pay for their child to go to school. Whether they pay in installments of $1, I don't think Comrade Obvious can testify to how much is paid in the rural areas, school fees, or I hear stories of young kids getting suspended or taken out of school for $5 a year. So I think the public is within its right to measure the performance legitimacy of the civil service. But in measuring it, the civil service is also within its right to say, look, we deserve the bonus. And in so doing, everybody then comes to a win-win agreement, so to speak, especially the social democratic one, where we say, look, the social service is working, our taxes are working, and therefore these comrades deserve bonuses. And where we do that, we stop treating civil servants like electoral cannon fodder, where you know that teachers are now basically subject to political abuse, whether they are arranging the rally, whether they are actually mobilizing voters. I know that in some cases teachers' unions get divided about endorsing political parties prior to an election, amongst other things. Where we do this, where we have this symbiotic relationship with the civil service, I'm sure we'll value the police, we'll value the Registrar General's office, administrative arms of local government, we'll value all of these sectors of the civil service without necessarily politicizing it. But it is key that we never isolate civil servants from the broader national political economy, which is what we are dealing with. Even if their interests are affected, those interests should also reflect that we are conscious that they are in trouble and that we will work together with them to solve their problems, insofar as their service to the Zimbabwean people is beyond the politicization of their actions, as well as insofar as it is in tandem with the social democratic idea. Those are my views.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Takura. I think he has raised some issues. I think he has pointed out that the common denominator in the announcement by the minister and the subsequent counter announcement by the president is the IMF. They need to please the International Monetary Fund. You know, we have the staff monitoring program, And he has also pointed out issues to do with state capitalism that is creeping in. So apart from pleasing the International Monetary Fund, he says the government is also bent on pleasing China and Russia, who also follow the model of state capitalism. And he also pointed out a key issue, that the civil servants must negotiate their value. Says one thing that we also have to look at, are the civil servants really doing the work? Do they deserve the bonuses? That's a question he is posing. I don't know how the civil servants are going to respond. He even pointed out the issue of the cropping up of private schools. You know, people are running away from public schools and so on. So he's saying that civil servants should negotiate their value, and they should also be seen to be doing work so that people can sympathize with them. Then the civil servants also have to unite in order to we want to start a platinum venture in Marsh West. Then people who are residing there are just swept away, no compensation whatsoever. This has happened. So he's saying that civil servants should join part of the broader national debate. So we are now going to have Obed presenting from the Rural Teachers Union perspective around this issue.
Thank you, Comrade. Thank you, before the brief overview that you gave us. Maybe to begin with, I will choose maybe to start by concluding, obviously quoting someone who I really quote. But on the 19th of April, on 2015, Dr. Tafatawana Mawoso said, by cutting civil servants' salaries and bonuses, retrenching some and increasing exam fees, you are choosing to shrink the Zimbabwean economy, to create physical space for IMF debt clearance at the expense of hard-working, patriotic masses. Obviously, to me, that is a conclusion of the discussion. And it touches on some of the issues that have already been raised by Comrade Takura. Now, we have a scenario where we have a cabal that smuggled themselves into a space that was historically occupied by the white minority. When the white minority was occupying that space, they would use it to complain, they used to shout on top of their voices. They are now occupying that space. And those who are still outside, the same space that was occupied by the black men, some live in poor areas, they are now bearing the brunt of all the vagaries of the economic meltdown that is being crafted by those who are within. But those who are within, they've proven to us to be both lazy and gluttonous. They are lazy for one. They are proving that they don't even have time to sit down and craft economic policies that can rescue this country. They wait for IMF to come and advise. It's more than advising. It's giving them the template and they just copy and paste. Now this is not the first time they did it, like Comrade Tabora alluded on earlier on during the ISAP era. When I was listening to Comrade Namasa's pronouncement and announcements, I thought of Bernard Tsero in 1990, almost the same ones that Chinamasa was saying in 2015. Now, the same targets, the same intentions of the ISAP era are the same intentions that we are witnessing today. But I think we have a whole Ministry of Economic Planning. If they are not lazy, they should tell us what they've been planning for our country. Because we believe we have a unique situation that can have its own unique interventions. We are looking honestly at the IMF, where the bulk of the countries they're from EU. The budget of Zimbabwe is less than 1% of all the countries in the European Union. They have their own proposed solutions, but do they really fit in our context? I think they might not. Was on 2 September in 1999, Tom Allen from the World Bank admitted that ISWAPO is failed. Maybe you or someone else will admit in 2017 this time that these measures that we advise, some of them are still failing. But in his admission to Mali, he went on to point critical areas that if today the government really want to kickstart this economy, like what Jakura was alluding to, he pointed on critical issues that growth needs to be inclusive. This is a critical issue. Growth must be inclusive. It should not be an elite settlement, then the people are just informed in the streets that you are planning to do A, B, C, D with your lives. It should be inclusive. Then he also agreed that the social sector expenditure also needs to be protected. It's the key areas in his admission on the 2nd of September 1999. So, we are saying this government, of course we have heard both the technocratic intentions of the finance ministry and the political intentions from the president. But both of them do not add up to anything. Obviously, we will be first-class fools if we start celebrating that we will get bonuses in December. That will be foolhardy. Because they still have outstanding bonuses to pay for from last year. So really the question is, we should be I keep on referring to what you said, we should start interrogating maybe the political economy and start finding ways of pushing this cabal to really, maybe if they still have the capacity to address critical areas. And also, but if they can't, we have maintained that, for me, the most vulnerable thing that Chinamasa can do as of now is to resign. He seems to be failing to provide any solution. Now we are saying he wants to create physical space. We will agree that physical space is created by different interventions that we cannot. We can create physical space by different interventions. Obviously, we'll start looking at our tax policy. Let's look at it critically. Start working on it, try to improve the administration, the collection, the performance, the compliance, and even ways of broadening the tax band. Is he proposing any of those, or just looking at ways of cutting? We are looking at the other issue of creating fiscal space, which is reallocation and rationalization. Now, some of us get worried when they say we want to cut bonuses. It's part of reallocation. They're cutting bonuses, maybe they will allocate bonuses also. But we are afraid these people, they don't inspire confidence in us that after cutting bonuses, where is this man going to be reported into? They don't have a track record of being accountable. They don't have a track record of giving any service. But that would be a good way of creating fiscal space. But we know areas that need to be cut. You can't tell us to tighten our belts when you're buying the trousers of the next size, or a bigger size than the one you were wearing. Then you want everyone else to tighten their belt. So really, if we are talking of reallocation and rationalization, we should be shifting resources from less efficient to more efficient uses and eliminating the inefficient areas. Now, we will all agree with me that Zimbabwe at the moment needs leadership. It needs that kind of a leader who will start that by saying maybe today, the first port of call, that would have started in Parliament, maybe this proposal that I will bring. It would have started in Parliament, but unfortunately, our Parliament, as we speak today, if we are going to have personal audit of the bulk of the people, they have one criminal record of looting or the other. Of course, I can even tell you names if I wanted anything. It's there in the public domain. Some land scandals, one scandal or the other. But if they choose to be sincere, the first port of call will just have to have a policy of repatriation. Where a personal audit of us in public, where did you get your money? I think this is a certain point. You were in grade 4 in Chendampuya, you failed your O levels. but now you own all this wealth. Can you account for it? If you can't, let's repatriate back to the state. This is part of some of the stimulus that can be used to drive this country. People have looted millions from this country. People have looted billions. You will have those billions in courts, you'll be sure that someone is in charge of 2 billion. But so maybe the starting point would be just that personal audit for each and every individual. How did you get this? Now, after that, maybe we would suggest that let's say ministries, maybe less than 20. Why do we need this project? We are cutting areas that don't work. And they have a minister, a deputy minister, a principal director, a director, a deputy director. Then they also have officers countrywide, but it's duplicating roles. You have one ministry, one other place. We all know that. Let's cut those ministries. You have the luxuries of the president. He's living in an island. I don't think if obviously the voters, of course, for one reason or the other, they choose to vote him. But obviously, we should also be cutting the luxuries that he enjoys. There are a lot of areas, the 75,000 ghost workers that they unearthed. Again, I don't know the term to use, unearthed or exposed, because someone might have known before that they exist, but we can use them interchangeably. Unearthed or exposed in 2010, 75,000 ghost workers. But our budget is still afford to sustain. Those are the areas to cut in the reallocate resources. Now, as civil servants, I felt challenged when Comrade Takurasha was speaking. We have always maintained our position that we want to give all that we can for our beloved country. People walk for 20 kilometers to teach in cross schools. Some live in inhabitable sanctuaries. 5 teachers in one room, but they still go out there and they do their own. Obviously, at the end of the day, when people choose to blame, they can choose to blame the teacher when the pass rates are low. They don't even look at the broader police framework that also affects the pass rates. Now, the last thing maybe that I will touch on is the issue of our debt strategy. Our debt strategy. We are doing this so that at least we can be able to re-engage in the national financing institutions. Now, obviously, the 3 models of trying to settle debt, the HIPC, we don't qualify, the highly indebted poor country, we failed to qualify. So obviously, Chinamasa is trying to blame the one for the debt rescheduling from short term to long term, which is again very dangerous. These people, they ate, they borrowed. Now they are deferring the settlement of debt to another generation. It's debt deferment from short term to long term. But if we carried out a debt audit, we actually ate what? Is this debt wholly for the public or some of it is private for individuals? There is no debt audit, there is no report whatsoever, so that we know who ate what, who did not eat what. But we are saying, for now, we want to borrow more. In future generations, we are deferring it to them so that they can be able to pay. As a teacher union, obviously I am speaking from 2 fronts as a representative of a teacher union from rural areas, and also as a part of a generation that is being fueled by bad leadership. Because I know my generation is those people who never enjoyed the granted college, they suffered privatization, and now they risk being retrenched from where they are working. Obviously, that is part of the austerity measures. But we are saying the teacher-people ratio in Zimbabwe is now still at 1:40, where the MDG is recommended to be 1:20. But when we want to retrench from those critical sectors and we maintain our state security, I don't know what will be like. Now, if there's anything that I left out from what Takura is, I think I just forgot. But basically, that is the long and short of it from our side.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Obed. I think he basically presented the union's perspective on the state of the economy. There is a worry that the government wants to cut on the expenditure on civil servants when it is not cutting expenditure on its own luxuries. I think he pointed out issues to do with so many ministries. The bureaucrats is actually expensive, and he actually proposed that even the luxuries that are due to the president must be cut. And he also went on to look at the debt, the issue of debt. He said that as part of our strategy to make sure that we go forward in line, we need to do a debt audit to see what went where and for what in terms of expenditure. This will probably help us in future not to engage in unnecessary debt. I think he also responded to the question of the value of civil servants. He's actually saying teachers are actually giving it all for Zimbabwe. He mentioned that some teachers are staying in one room being fined, squalid conditions, and yet they continue to pursue. Some of them are walking 20 kilometers to perform their duty of teaching, and so on and so forth. I don't know if that answers the issue of value that Takura was speaking to. And the bottom line of it, I think, is that austerity measures should be well directed. They should not be misplaced. Otherwise, they may not be austerity measures. It may just be a matter of other people telling others to tighten their belts, when in actual fact they are looking for new belts. So having said that, I think it's now proper. He also referred to Parliament. And he said we should start in Parliament. And that's when he then referred to the issue of need for repatriation of that which was looted. He is saying that we need to do an audit made of parliamentarians, of cabinet ministers, and other rich people to see where they got their work. I think recently we had the news from Namibia. Geingob, the new president of Namibia, he actually said that he's going to declare his assets, and he also said that they are going to declare the assets of the first lady of Namibia. And we could also follow suit. And he also said that senior government officials are going also to declare, to give statements on their intent to declare their assets. And I think that is in line with what Obed was saying. So maybe these are broad micro and macroeconomic issues, which I think it gives me time now to extend the podium to Honorable Mashakada. I think Honorable Mashakada is the best suited to comment on this matter. He has been in the Ministry, I think, of Economic Planning, and I think the matters that have been raised here pertain to economic planning, and some of them also pertain to Parliament. And he would be the best person to present now. Honorable Mashakada.
Thank you.